This week's Sikha is actually one of the most wild Sikhas in Tafshin Nun beis. The revolutionary idea that the Rebbe presents in this week's Sikha is absolutely extraordinary, demanding, and of course practical and Moshiach. This week's Sikha, for those of us who are serious learners, which is every single person here in the room, of course. For those of us who are serious learners of Tafshin Nun Aleph, Tafshin Nun beis, we all understand the flow and the fact that the whole year is one long hemshech. And therefore the fact that Parshas vayigash is 2 weeks after Parshas vayeshev, for any one of us who compares the two sikhs together, we're going to see unbelievable parallels, and we're going to see that Sichas Parshas Vayeshev Tafshin Nun beis, in a sense, is seemingly almost the opposite, if one may say, than Vayigash Tafshin Nun beis. But of course, it works together. And on News Daiti, later on, I'm going to share the core chiluk between Vayeshev Nun beis and Vayigash Nun beis. All right, and we are starting. The Rebbe points out that because we're so close to the times of the geula, or in other words, we're so much in the end of Galus and so much in the beginning, towards the beginning of the geula, that everything that's happening has some sort of vayigash, some sort of relevance and some sort of lesson for our current avodah now in the end of Galus and the beginning of the geula. And the Rebbe's question is a very simple one. This week's parsha is Parshas vayigash. What's the connection, and of course, what's the lesson between Parshas vayigash and our current avodah in the end of Galus and the beginning of the geula? That's the opening question that the Rebbe gives in the Sikha. I want to just for a moment pause and observe the Rebbe's perspective on life. The Rebbe's perspective is, and the Rebbe looks at everything as a hira, not just in general in life, but how is it a hira for us right now in the last moments of Galus, and how is it a hira for our avodah of Kabbalah Pnei Moshiach Tzidkenu? So, just to observe the Rebbe's perspective, how everything is not just a hira, not just an inspirational thing, at first, the Rebbe offers a certain answer. The Rebbe says, well, the connection between the geula and this parsha is quite obvious. How? In the Haftarah. The Haftarah describes, the Navi describes how Hashem tells him to take 2 pieces of wood. On one piece of wood to write Yehuda, on the other one to write Yosef, and put them together, and they're going to become one piece of wood, and that's going to represent the rich tear that the Jewish nation had in their history of Malchus Yisrael and Malchus beis David, which we all know was a very big very big tear in the Jewish nation. When Moshiach comes, the Jewish nation will once again become one and will be under one umbrella, under one government, under one king. And of course, that king is going to be Mizera Yehuda, known as Moshiach. And that king is going to be ruling over the world. So at first glance, the connection between the geula and the parasha is quite obvious. The Haftarah is all about what's going to happen when Moshiach comes. The kingdom is going to merge together. The Rebbe doesn't suffice with this answer. Number one, says the Rebbe, meaning there's 2 reasons why it's not a good answer. Why it's not a good connection to the geula. Number one, there's no hira for us over here. That's not a lesson. That's just telling us what's going to happen when Moshiach comes. But it's not a lesson what we should be doing now in the last moments of Galus. Again, stop and think about the Rebbe's perspective. The Rebbe wants that even the parasha should teach us a lesson. What's our avodah? What we should be doing in our avodah right now in the last moments of Galus. Look how urgent Moshiach is for the Rebbe, that the Rebbe wants to stop and realize and acknowledge what's the hira for us now in our current avodah, in our unique avodah. The second reason why the Rebbe says it's not good enough is because the connection between the Haftarah and the geula is seemingly a contradiction to the beginning, first part of the parasha. In the first part of the parasha, who's in power? And that's basically what the whole sikh is about. Who's in power? Yosef or Yehuda? Well, from the Haftarah we definitely see that who's going to be in power? Yosef or Yehuda? From the Haftarah we see that it's Yehuda, right? Moshiach is Mizera Yehuda. But from the beginning of the parasha, on the other hand, describes how seemingly Yehuda is the one that's coming over to Yosef in order to ask Yosef to take out Binyamin, meaning that who's in charge? Yosef. Yehuda has to come over to Yosef to beg him, please, be Adaini, he calls him my master, please release Binyamin. So what do we see over here? We see that there's seemingly a contradiction between the first part of the parasha and the Haftarah. The first part of the parasha, Yehuda is just a slave to Yosef, and Yosef is the king. And the Haftarah, who's in charge, who's the king? The answer is Yehuda, meaning Moshiach is the king, and Yosef seemingly is under the king. In fact, going even deeper, there's this contradiction even within the parasha itself. The first part of the parasha describes how Yosef is in charge if he's just a slave. Rabbi. Oh, he says Rabbi's picture, he says Rabbi. While the second part of the parasha, the last part of the parasha, in other words, describing how the Yidden settled in Eretz Goshen, that seemingly describes how Yosef wasn't necessarily the top of the Jewish people. On the contrary, the Jewish people, Judah amongst them, were in a much better state of not just being slaves, but being masters of their own. All this being said, we're back to square one, which is, what's the connection between this week's parasha and the geula Amitis Vashti? So the Rabbi wants to go a little bit deeper. The Rabbi says, in truth, maybe if we go a little bit deeper, the connection when we go a little bit deeper to ask the question of who's really more of a ruler, who's in a higher level, at first glance, as we said until now, Yosef is the ruler. But if we go a little bit deeper, actually, Yehuda has a certain advantage over Yosef. What's the advantage that Yehuda has over Yosef? The answer is that Yosef is taka a ruler and he's going, he's taka in charge, but Yehuda has a certain break. Yehuda has what we call in English a certain chutzpah, that he doesn't mind going over to the king, the ruler, basically the entire world, and telling him, listen, here's a chaim. I don't mind killing you, I don't mind killing your master, Paray, I don't mind killing the whole Egypt. Yehuda doesn't mind confronting, vayigash Yehuda doesn't mind confronting. He does not mind confronting Yosef HaTzadik and telling Yosef HaTzadik, I'm going to kill you. Okay, sorry about that. And one more time, starting over again. Yehuda's breitkeit, in short, seemingly shows on an advantage that Yehuda has over Yosef HaTzadik. And that's the second attempt that the Rebbe gives to answer the question. That, by the way, that would answer all the questions. The first part of the parasha describes Yehuda's greatness, how breit he is, how much strength he has. And that's why by the end of the parasha, Yehuda Taka becomes in charge with the other Shvatim over Eretz Goshen. And that's why the Haftarah ends off with Yehuda being in charge, meaning Menachem Moshiach. Because it all starts in the beginning of the parasha with Yehuda's breitkeit, with Yehuda's strength, Yehuda's quote unquote inner courage to go and confront Yosef and so on and so forth. But the Rebbe challenges this as well. The Rebbe says, we understand that Yehuda had a certain advantage over Yosef. But why taka do we b'chlal need Yehuda in the picture? What's it necessary to have Yehuda? You're telling me that Yehuda was so strong and that's why the Shvatim ended up settling. What do you mean? Yosef is in charge. Let Yosef take care of the Shvatim. Let Yosef take care of Eretz Goshen. Or a little bit deeper than that. We know that Yakov sent Yehuda. It's Yehuda shalach l'fanav Goshna. Yehuda was sent by Yakov Avinu to go to Eretz Mitzrayim to prepare the ground for Yakov Avinu. Fragte the Shaila, why? Why did Yakov need to send Yehuda to prepare the ground? Yosef is the king. Yosef is in charge of the whole land. Why can't Yakov just ask Yosef to manage the situation, to prepare the ground? Why this Yehuda shalach l'fanav Goshna? So according to the Taich, it's in a Ha'ara, it's many sichos. According to the Taich, the pshat is to prepare means to go build yeshivas. It's clear because if a person being involved in yeshiva, he can be a king involved in the government and also in yeshiva. Because yeshiva you have to be disconnected from the world. But if Pshatin is just to prepare the ground, just to build the buildings and whatever, why Taka do you need to send Yehuda? Why couldn't Yakov just ask Yosef Atzadik, which was the king anyways, to take care of preparing the ground? Yeah, the question is clear to everyone? Hello?
Yes.
It's a good question. Obviously, says the Rebbe, and this is where the questions sort of finish off, and this is where the Rebbe starts going a little bit into the juice. Every nekuda every sikha always has that nekuda, the nekuda of the sikha. So this is where we're starting to already scratch the surface of the nekuda of the sikha. However, this sikha is so wild. No words to describe. Obviously, Yosef and Yehuda represent two different paths of how to serve Hashem. There's Yosef's path and there's Yehuda's path. And obviously, Yakov felt the need to send Yehuda down to Mitzrayim to prepare the ground, because Yakov knew that in order to really be successful in Mitzrayim, you have to have Yehuda's derech and avodas Hashem, which we did not yet spell out what the difference between them is, but at least now we understand Yosef and Yehuda wasn't a battle. It wasn't a fight. It's not a question who's better, who's worse, who's more in charge, who's less in charge. It's rather a question of, it's two different drachim in avodas Hashem, and the question is, which derech is the right derech? And of course, typically to the Rebbe, the answer is eventually going to be both. Both drachim are required, as we will see step by step. Which derech does Yosef represent? Yosef is a ruler over Mitzrayim. He's the most powerful person in the entire world. Time of famine, Rav, there's no food in the whole world. Yosef is the only one that is holding onto the monopoly, quote unquote, of the economy. He's the only one that has food in the world. Talking about a person that owns the largest army in the entire world at the time. I mean, serious, influential person Yosef is. But there's one chisaron, quote unquote, if you want to say it like this, that Yosef has. And that is, he's official. He's official. First of all, he's under Paro's rulership, meaning he still has to, at least somewhat, listen to Paro. But second of all, what gives him strength? What gives Yosef strength is the fact that he is part of the government, and that the people, elected him and appointed him, and the people, the people of the land, quote unquote, is what's giving him his strength. If you want to say it in very technical terms, Yosef has a very legal strength. Yehuda, on the other hand, represents exactly the opposite. Yehuda represents someone who his strength doesn't come because of the law. On the contrary, Yehuda was breaking the law by confronting Yosef in such an aggressive way. So Yehuda's strength, Yehuda's also a king, but a very different type of king. Not the type of king which is elected and everything is organized, legally, this is who he is. No, Yehuda is a king be'etzem. He looks at himself as a leader. So even though he's technically a slave right now, he's under the rulership of Yosef. Nevertheless, when he approaches Yosef, he approaches him as if Yehuda speaking is approaching him as if he himself is a king. It's an inner quality, it's an inner midah of malchus. So again, to summarize, Yosef's kingship is more of a chitzonistic kingship. It's a kingship which comes as a result of the people around him electing him as a king. Yehuda's kingship, meaning the fact that Yehuda is a king, is something which is ingrained in his DNA. It's who he is, it's what he is. And therefore, when Yehuda confronts Yosef, he doesn't mind being chutzpah like Yosef, quote unquote. Why? Because what is Yehuda? Yehuda's be'etzem a king in himself, not because anybody appointed him. We're going to develop these points in a moment. But let's for a moment go to talk about Purim. Real Chassidim make the observation that Tafshin Nun Aleph and Nun Beis, there was no Purim. Meaning Tafshin Nun Beis, there was no Purim Sicha. Because it was a double year, Chav Zayin Adar was Adar Aleph. So there was no proper Purim Sicha said to us, meaning that was possible to be said to us that year. But real Chassidim say that this Sicha is basically the Rebbe being mocked in the Purim Sicha for the year. Because we know that in Aleph and Beis, the Rebbe gives us the tools that we need, how to see Moshiach in everything and in every Yom Tov. So when it comes to Purim, the Rebbe is already now giving us the tools how to see the avodah of Purim and Moshiach take away, and how Purim is an asinas koyach for the avodah of Yemois Moshiach, as we will see. And I'll keep that in mind. Okay. So let's talk about the story of Purim for a moment. And I'll be mekatzer a little bit. I'm not going to go so long. I'll focus more on the main point, but everything else around it, I'm going to go a little bit faster. So I see some bachrim are a little bit on shpilkes, so maybe the bachrim on shpilkes should just leave. It's probably better for everyone else and for yourself. Just whoever you are, if you're on shpilkes, just get up, leave the room. Don't disturb yourself, don't disturb others. Me personally, it distracts me. I can imagine how much it's distracting the people which are just listening. Don't be embarrassed. It's fine. It's better. Instead of 40 kids or 30 kids losing out because one guy's on shpilka, it's better one guy should leave and lose out and everyone else should gain. Anyhow. And it goes like this. And once again, we're going to focus mainly on the Nekudah. Achashverosh made a feast. Achashverosh's feast was a feast that he was trying to please everyone that came to the party. Or in the Lashon of the Megillah, Achashverosh wanted to do La'asais Kirtzain Ish Ve'ish. Achashverosh wanted it to be according to the will and the desire of every single person. Who's Ish Ve'ish? So simply put, Ish Ve'ish, meaning who's the person and the person that he wants to please. Ultimately the answer is of course Mordechai and Haman. The simple explanation to what that means, that he wanted to please both Mordechai and Haman in the party, was obviously that he served kosher food and not kosher food. But what it means a little bit on a deeper way, what it means a little bit in a deeper level is that Achashverosh was trying to combine two different drachim in Avodas Hashem, which is the derech of Haman and the derech of Mordechai. And we're going to explain exactly what this means. Haman represents, you know what, let's start with Mordechai, it's going to be a little bit easier. Mordechai represents a person who doesn't care about Elam Hazeh Agashmi. Mordechai represents a person that the only thing that he cares about is the malchus. The only thing which he cares about is to do what the Eibashter wants. This whole physical world with everything that it entails means nothing to him. I said today a story, just to bring out this Nekudah. I think the Geshmaka story. I know we're a little bit tight on time, but this story really brings it out. Shmuel Munkus, everybody knows Shmuel Munkus. There are certain things about Shmuel Munkus that we don't know. Shmuel Munkus was very poor. Imamish had no money. And at a certain point, he was offered a shidduch for his daughter with a son of another chassid. I don't remember now who the chassid was, but anyhow, they come to the town, and if Shmuel is very poor, Kitzer, he's dressed the way he's dressed, and his daughter, the Mushudeches, that's going to go out, Kivyachol, to get engaged to this guy, is also, because they're so poor, she's wearing shmatas. Anyhow, she mamash looks like a beggar. They walk into the town, he tells his daughter, okay, listen, I'm going to go to Shul to daven Shachris, and you go knock on their door, tell them that you came to get married to them, and it's going to work out. Okay, fine. The daughter, she's Shmuel Munkus' daughter after all, so she also the manners of the world don't really teves makim. And there she goes, she knocks on the door, and he goes to daven Shachris. She knocks on the door, the chassid, the father opens the door, he sees her, he tells her one moment, goes back in, comes back out, a few kopek, a few pennies, puts it in her hand, he tells her she has a lot of tzlacha b'ezras Hashem. So she asks him, what's this? He says, money, you're collecting money, no? So she says, no, I'm not a beggar, I'm not collecting money. He looks at this girl in front of him, gacha shmates and everything. He asks, so why did you come here? She said, what do you mean? To get married to your son. I have a shidduch with your son. So he looks at her, he says, you're Shmuel Munkus' daughter. So she says, yeah. She said, where is he? He said, oh, he's in Shul davening Shachris. He got so upset. What is the chassid father sends his daughter by herself? She looks like a beggar. We're going to your father right now. Kitzer, he barges into the shul together with her, and of course he makes the mistake of waiting until Shmuel Munkus finishes davening, 2-3 hours basically. And when Shmuel finally finishes davening, he runs over to Shmuel and he starts screaming at him. What is this? You're sending your daughter without coming with her. She's wearing shmatas. What's going on with you? Escort your daughter like a man. Wear proper clothing for your daughter. So Shmuel looks at him very calmly, very, badishut, and he tells him, I would know your son is spoiled from Elam Hazeh. I would never even think to have a shidduch with you. He says, what do you need spoiled? You need spoiled from what she's wearing. That's what's bothering you. That's what's bothering you, what she's wearing. So certain chassidim, and this is the nekuda of Mordechai Yehudi, Elam Hazeh Agashmi means nothing. What does Elam Hazeh Agashmi mean? Mamish nothing. I once heard a chassid, this is an extreme story, probably shouldn't be repeated, but I'm not for repeating it. A chassid once came back home after long Shabbos davening, and he was informed that his daughter just passed away. He was still under the influence of davening, very strongly. Davening is a strong drug, you know. If the drug addicts would know how geschmack davening is, they would probably be addicted to davening. So he was so much under the influence of davening. His reply was, what did he reply? He said, no, an neshama hin, an neshama her. What's the chiluk? An neshama inside the body, an neshama outside the body. What's the big difference? The neshama is still here. These are dargas of elokus that, like, you know, we're not supposed to be shaykh to, as we're going to see in the sikha in a moment. But the grain, I mean, of course, we're supposed to be shaykh to this kind of appreciation. The grain, the idea that Elam Hazeh Gashmi means nothing to me. Stam, one time Shmuel Munkis and Gashmius. Anybody here know how Shmuel Munkis passed away? Shmuel Munkis walked into the shul, beis medrash, and he clapped on the table. And he said, who wants to see a goat die? Okay. Who wants to see a goat die? And he's sitting in Zal. Those days, they were more serious than us. And, okay, I'm saying, you're getting an offer to stop learning Gemara or Chassidus to go see a goat die, like, Tashtikol. But after it is Shmuel Munkis, you know, the guy which the Alter Rebbe consulted if to go to jail, and I mean, it's a serious guy. Okay, so two Chassidim understood the Yesh Dvarim B'Gai. So they came with Shmuel Munkis. They said, we want to go see, they could come with me. He takes him through a forest, a back house of some guy's barn. Kacha, inside a back house, there's like straw inside. Kitzer, he sets up the straw on the floor, says Vidu, he lies down, and he passed away. That was Shmuel Munkis. He laughed off the whole idea of Gashmius. If somebody knew he was going to pass away in 20 minutes from now, what would be his reaction? The heart is pounding and spending time with the family and, you know, giving away all the presents. Who wants to see a goat die? Come with me. He lights the straw, says Vidu, he passes away. Like, the whole thing was one big, like, what have I said there? This is darkness of looking at Elam Hazeh Agashmi with such a nifnuf, with such a, what is it even worth? That's Mordechai Yehudi. So just to clarify the definition over here, not just as Mordechai Yehudi, a person that keeps halacha and Torah and mitzvahs and is a film yid. Even deeper than that, Mordechai Yehudi is someone that Elam Hazeh Agashmi means absolutely nothing to him. Come to him and tell him, oh sir, by the way, you should just know that the Nayak Sheba Elam is ... He's going to laugh at you. He'll say, what are you talking about? On the other hand, we have Haman. Who's Haman? Haman is exactly the opposite. Haman is someone which has a very interesting theory, which these days, I think, the Reform movement is very mat'im to this ruach, the Haman that the Rebbe is describing inside the Sikha. This Haman has a very interesting theory. If Hashem put us in Galus, it must be that we're supposed to be in Galus. Meaning, if Hashem put us, for example, in America, it must be that we're supposed to be like American people. So we're going to eat turkey on certain days of the year. We're going to have, you know, as the Rebbe always says, Fabringens, orange juice in the morning. We're going to have the juice, the Rebbe always says, Fabringens. We're going to have the juice in the mornings while we read the paper. We're gonna, you know, we live in America. We're supposed to behave at least somewhat like Americans. Now, of course, we're not going to compromise on Torah and mitzvahs. But the way we carry ourselves, it's not pshat that we're Jewish Americans. It's that we're American Jews. First we're American, then we're also Jewish when it comes in. So I'm saying that this is the reform movement of these days, which is mamish. I mean, the reform is falling apart, Baruch Hashem. But the nekuda is that the reform movement, this is their svara. We live in this world, we live in the culture. We have to live in the culture. Yeah, what's the lashon? They have a lashon. They say, be a Jew at home and a mensch in the street. Right? Be a Jew at home and a mensch in the street. In other words, part of being a mensch is that when I walk into the street, I behave like the elam around me, with all the different minhagim of the world around me. So the difference between Mordechai and Haman is not a technical one, that Mordechai keeps mitzvahs and Haman, you know, whatever. It's a much deeper difference. It's that Mordechai is bichlal not mischashev with the whole concept of anachas ha'olam, while Haman is pum fakert. His whole chashivas is, how does the world look at it? How does the world do it? I remember the first culture shock that I ever got in the world of Balabatim. You know, I grew up in yeshiva. Elam Hazeh Gashmi In yeshiva, you don't know what gashmius is. You think you know what gashmius is. Yeshiva makes sure to ingrain in you that you shouldn't know what gashmius is. They have leaks in the ceiling, and the food has a... No, I'm joking, chas v'shalom. And the good is that the first time that I bumped into Balabatishkeit was, I came over for a Shabbos meal to one of the Balabatim. And I said, okay, so there's a Menachem, okay, so he takes out a bottle of wine, and I put out my plastic cup for him to pour me l'chaim. He tells me, no. I said, well, what happened? He says, no, I can't. I say, what happened? You're not going to give me some l'chaim, some wine? He says, no, I can't. I said, why not? He says, no, Menachem, be a mensch. I say, whoa, what did I do wrong? I'm sorry. He says, the wine glass, wine you drink from a glass. So I tell him, why? He says, because that's the way you do it. That is basically noyag ha'olam. I told him, that's the case, I will bedavka not say l'chaim from a glass, I will bedavka say from a plastic cup. He had a hard time. He couldn't get himself to pour it to me, so I poured it for myself. But I'm giving you an example of what's hanachas ha'olam. Hanachas ha'olam could become so interesting. Now, this guy meant for my benefit. He wanted it to taste better. I don't know, the crystal, the glass, the energy. I don't know exactly what the theories here are. The electricity that comes from the wine. I don't know what the story here is. But then it could is, I'm not chashav mezalzel in the fact that this guy loves me. I have no doubt it's coming out of real love. But the value system... So Haman and Mordechai are different, not in their behavior. They're different in their principles of life. Okay, now which one of them is right? Who's right, Haman or Mordechai? Huh? Well, what's the obvious answer? Mordechai. Obviously Mordechai is right. What do you mean? Who thinks that Haman is right? So in fact, the Eibishter reveals himself to Achashverosh. At least the Medrash describes it like that. Or the Eibishter is talking about Achashverosh. And the Eibishter tells Achashverosh, Habibi, you got it wrong. These days during Galus, it's impossible. There's two midrashim, but I'm not going to get into the difference between them right now. I'm going to come straight to the point. That these days, during the time of Galus, it's impossible to combine opposites. Mordechai and Haman are opposites. You're trying to make a feast, a fiesta, which I'm letting you know that these days, during the time of Galus, it's impossible to combine opposites. Masha'enkim when Moshiach comes, says the Medrash, the Eibishter says to Achashverosh, Masha'enkim when Moshiach comes, then you will be able to combine opposites. And the Medrash gives different examples, like two opposite sides of wind coming to each other, and some other examples. But the Nekuda is that we see from here the Nekuda is the Eibishter is telling Achashverosh that now during Galus it's impossible to combine opposites. But we get a glimpse. So who could combine opposites? The Eibishter. And not just could the Eibishter combine opposites, but really in truth, every single Yid when Moshiach comes, will also have the ability to combine opposites. Oh, 1 second. That means that if I'm a Yid that lives in Galus, and I want to get a taste of the geula, I could already now start the avodah of combining two opposites, such as Mordechai and Haman. Now, what does all this mean in Avodas Hashem? This is going to be the point of the Sikha, and then we'll finish off with the last Torah, and of course tie back to Yehuda, and that will be the end of it. So we're almost done. But now here comes the point. This is the Nekud of the Sikha. Mordechai represents a person shelo ichpat lo, he couldn't care less about the hanachas ha'olam, about how this physical world looks at things. Haman represents a person that this whole world, with all of its rules and regulations and functions and customs, that's his Torah. That's what he cares about most. Comes Achashverosh. Who's Achashverosh? The one that Achlish V'reishis Shalai comes the Eibishter. Achashverosh, we know famously, represents the Eibishter on a higher level. Achashverosh, meaning the Eibishter, comes and tells us that he should know that what's the way to live life. The answer is Lases Kirtzayin Ish Ve'ish. The way to live life is Lases Kirtzayin Ish Ve'ish, to behave like both Mordechai and Haman. Meaning, in other words, that what's really demanded of us even now during the time of Galus, which we're only going to really be able to accomplish this avodah when Moshiach comes, but we could already start living with it already now, is to live both like Haman and like Mordechai. How does that make sense? Why would we want to live like Haman? And the answer is a very simple one. The Maila that Haman has is that he's in the world. The Maila that Mordechai is that Elokus is real to him. Says the Rebbe, well, you know what the Avodah is? The Avodah is the Elokus should be real to us in the world. Yes, we should be in the world. Yes, we should understand the mentality of the world. Yes, we should put ourselves into the world, but not chas v'shalom because we are limited to the world, not chas v'shalom because we value the world, but rather because we want to bring a lakus even into the world. Look at the customs of the world as a language. When I perform the different things that the world does, when I perform different things that the world does, but with the mindset that I'm only doing it in order to reveal the lakus in the world, it's like I'm speaking a language of Elam Hazeh. And I'm speaking the language of Elam Hazeh and communicating messages of Elokus in the language of Elam Hazeh to the world. So we gave this example of 2 weeks ago, if you remember. Comes a Hasidic Yid and says, billboards on the highway. Who even looks at billboards? Comes a person that slashes Ketzonish Veish. Comes a person that's both Haman and Mordechai together. And he says, you know what? We're putting up a billboard. And what's going to be on the billboard? A picture of the Rebbe. Oh, that's last Ketzonish Veish. I value the world. I understand that billboards is a certain language that the world speaks. And I'm going to speak that language, but what am I going to be talking about? Elokus. I give this examples 2 weeks ago as well. The following example. And it's very, very powerful examples. Let's say, for example, a person likes making videos. It's a language of Elam Hazeh. So one could say, videos. Everyone in this world today, these days, everyone's into making videos of themselves. But guess what? How about if instead of the internet or whatever it is being flooded with tons of Nadish videos, maybe we should start flooding the internet with videos of Shirei Torah and of the beis hamikdash and of the Rabbi. Why is it that on the internet you can only find Narishkeit and you can't find any kedusha? Now, of course, you have to be strong enough and you have to know what you're doing. You can't just stam chas shalom going. But then the kudda is that instead of me saying internet is fat, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want to think about it. 1 second. On the one hand, I'm Haman. I understand that Elam Hazeh has a certain language. And in Elam Hazeh, that language is that people like browsing the internet to find things out. That's the language that people speak these days. So let me upload to the internet the tremendous amount of information about the Rebbe, and about Chabad, and about Holocaust, and about Shul Mitzvahs, and about Chabad houses, and the locations of Chabad houses, and what Chabad is all about, and what Holocaust is about, what Shabbos is, what Tefillin is, what Mezuzah is. That way, when people that live in the mentality of Elam Hazeh, which is where they Google every question that they have on the planet, let them be flooded with tons of Elokus. Now that's Lasses Ketzonish Veish. I didn't say internet is fair. Let me walk around the whole day only with books. I said, you know what? The mentality of Elam Hazeh Agashmi is to speak this language. I'll speak that language. But why? Not because I need it. You ask me personally where am I holding? I couldn't care less about Elam Hazeh. Only because I understand that we're here to make a deal with Tachtonim. Only because I understand that this is our shluchus, meaning this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be revealing Elokus in Elam Hazeh in the language of Elam Hazeh. Now we understand what Achashverosh, meaning the Eibashter, is really trying to accomplish. What Achashverosh, meaning the Eibashter, is really trying to accomplish is to bring the Yidden to Amayim Medumatzev, to bring the Yidden to a situation where where a Yid could, on the one hand, live in the world, understand that there's a certain mannerism in the world, understand that there's a certain language that the world speaks, but at the same time, Elokus is so bepshitus, and a Yid couldn't care less about Anachas Eilam, but he's going to do it and play the game and play the show only in order to be able to make it in the Elam Hazeh. Let's give a practical example. A shliach wears a tie. The day that a shliach wears a tie because he feels good from wearing a tie is the day he has to say Krishma Shalamita with a lot of tears. A shliach doesn't wear a tie because it feels good for him to wear a tie, but because he understands that in the elam, in the people's language of the world, when I wear a tie, I look more chashuv for whatever weird reason, and therefore I'm going to wear a tie so that people should listen to me better. Okay, beseder. Now, if that same shliach walks into 770 and he's still wearing his tie, now could be he has the Koravim around. But if, let's say, he's in a Maimedu Matzah that he's going to bring him with his classmates from his childhood, from Alotera, whatever, if he's still wearing his tie, there's a problem here. I'm not saying the problem is wearing a tie be'etzim. It's an akuda. Certain things we do just to present ourselves to Elam Hazeh in a good way. That Elam Hazeh should open up their ears to want to hear lakus, to be a malchus the lakus in the teva. But not because it's really negat us. On the contrary, mitzad me, I couldn't care less about it. Shliach walks around with cufflinks. Why do you think he's walking around with cufflinks? And the obvious answer is to be able to be presentable to people. So when now he's going to say a word of lakus, a word from the parsha, people's ears are much more open. He's not a shlump talking, it's a chashuv guy talking, kivyachol in their eyes. But again, the shliach mitzad himself, lo nogia lo b'chal to wear cufflinks. He cares about a ma'amer chassidus. As the Rabbi says by Fabringen, now we all listen to it on teves Fabringen's this video, Shaila and Rambam. This is my Indian. All this being said, what's the nekuda? Going back to Yehuda. When Yehuda walked over to Yosef, and Yehuda tells Yosef a tzaddik, my master, don't worry, my dear master. I apologize for talking harsh. I apologize, and please don't be upset at me. Please don't be upset at me. I Pasha took responsibility for Binyamin. Please don't be upset at me. So what's Yehuda doing over here? Yehuda's Tivyachol talking a very, very strong language of Elam Hazeh. Yehuda's going down into Elam Hazeh, into the mentality of Elam Hazeh, that there's a king, and I talk respectfully to the king, and I talk with Tivyachol from the king. That's on the one hand. But at the same time, what was Yehuda's actual message? That if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to kill you, I'll kill Pare, I'll kill the old Egyptians, I couldn't care less about you guys are not scaring me, you're not a threat to me. In other words, Yehuda is giving two opposite messages at once. On the one hand, he was walking in very diplomatic, very, very, very with the world, in the world. But at the same time, his message to Yosef was a very simple one. I'm not nispal, not from you. I could kill you, I could kill Pare. I'm not nispal from you. Says the Rebbe, what's the hira? What's the bottom line answer to the first question that we start off with? What's the hira? What's the hira from this whole story in regards to our avodah right now? Right before the geula hamikdash v'ashlema, the answer is that when Moshiach comes, we're going to be able to really have these two opposites living within us. And we could already now start living that avodah. Already now in Galus, we could really start living this avodah of looking at the world as balabatim. Not in every generation was it possible. Some generations, there was Taker, Redifais, there was Russians, there was KGB, there was, Nazis, we should never know. But in our generation, says the Rebbe, and you could see the Muchosh, a Yid could partially be a balabas over the world around him. It's a matter of just making that choice. That a Yid knows, I'm a balabas over the world. Why? Because I'm part of Hashem. Hashem is the boss, the Rebbe is the boss, I'm part of Hashem, I'm part of the Rebbe. I'm a boss over the world. Now, I'm not going to go over to the world and start, they say in English, start bullying people because I'm the boss. On the contrary, I'll go into Elam Hazeh and I'll speak to them on their terms and I'll speak nicely to them. But in myself, I don't feel for a split second that this guy has any chashivas over me. I don't feel for a split second like this guy has any sort of memshala over me. On the contrary, I know the only boss is Hashem. I am speaking to them in a certain language of kavod and whatever. Not just to speak the language of Elam Hazeh, to bring Elokus into the world. But mitzad me, I'm b'chlal nispal from this person. The Rebbe finishes off with a tremendous hira, practical one. The vayigash of Yehuda. Who is Yehuda? Every single one of us. Yehuda wants to redeem Binyamin. Who's Binyamin? Binyamin is Sfarim. And the Rabbi explains that our avodah, vayigash of Yehuda, to redeem Binyamin, is our avodah to go and redeem the Sfarim. How do we redeem the Sfarim practically? And the answer is the Sfarim are nebach captive on the shelves of the store, or in the boxes in the warehouse of the store. And we could redeem these Sfarim by buying them and using them. So when we go, we buy Sfarim, and of course eventually we use them. That is an avodah of vayigash of Yehuda to go and redeem Binyamin. That's an avodah of us going over to the store and to redeem Binyamin and redeem Sfarim. To finish off with one personal example to bring out this point, and that will be the end of it, or the beginning of it. I was just now in Cuba for Hanukkah. And in Cuba we have a lot of different challenges, Baruch Hashem. But one of the challenges that we have in Cuba is that we're trying to get a visa from the government over there to be able to live there. Of course, the goal of going to Cuba is to bring Moshiach. But Galus Geret, part of our avodah there now is to get a visa to be able to live there. So we had a meeting with the government officials. We had a few meetings already in the past, and this was a follow-up meeting that we scheduled. And this time we came to them with a prepared presentation. Presentation that we invested a lot in. We're speaking about this presentation that we invested a lot. It cost us a few $100s to make this presentation. Very, very top of the line type of presentation, a PowerPoint, a lot of pictures and links to different places to show what Chabad does around the world and to show how Chabad benefits the world and how Cuba would benefit if Chabad moves there. So for me, it was a very interesting experience. I felt a glimpse, a little bit, of what the Rebbe is describing over here about Yehuda. Meaning what? I felt like vayigash of Yehuda, like walking over to the government officials, and I had two mixed feelings within me. On the one hand, I wanted it to be as presentable as possible in their eyes, that they should like it, should look good. Look, we spent hundreds of dollars making a beautiful presentation. That's not a joke. We didn't do chaplap, write some things on a note and give it to them. Real top end. I wanted it to be presentable, to look nice. But at the same time, the other feeling that I had, which really was even a stronger feeling, was I looked at them the whole time, Samitzad how my mind thought about them, Samitzad how my heart felt about them, and that's also what I communicated to them with my words, in a respectful way, of course, was that you have no shlita over here. You guys have no control. You're the government. It doesn't make a difference. You're not the boss. Hashem is the boss. So I'm speaking to you in your language. I'm giving you a presentation. I'm trying to do things in your language that you should understand me. But at the same time, I'm bechlal not nispal from you. I don't think for a split second that you're more in charge than me. On the contrary, I'm more in charge than you. I'm a chelek elokam mal mamish, and you're not. I'm part of Hashem, and you're not. That means that I have more of a say what's going to happen in Cuba than you have. You're the government. You're Yosef HaTzadik, lahavdil of of course. You're the government. You're the king. Yeah, but you're limited to teva. I'm not limited to teva. I'm a chelek elokam mal mamish. I'm connected to the Rebbe. Uvemela what? I have more of a say what's going to happen in Cuba than the actual government of Cuba has. It's goyim. Goyim have no free choice. They can only do what Hashem wants. I have free choice. I could daven and change Hashem's will, or reveal Hashem's will. All this being said, I'm trying to give you a practical example that just happened to me mamash last week of vayigash of Yehuda, this experience of, on the one hand, going to the government. And government is an extreme example, of course, but it's the same nekuda regarding every episode of Elam Hazeh. On the one hand, yes, going to Elam Hazeh, yes, going to the government, yes, talking to them in their language, but at the same time having this clarkai that I'm more of a boss in the situation here, I'm more of a boss in the situation here more than you because I'm a part of Hashem.